Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning for our first official Bunnelle Zoom event. We surveyed all of our nonprofit partners to see what you all wanted during this crazy time, and today's panel discussion, Building a Brighter Tomorrow, is a direct result of that survey. So yes, people do read your surveys, and we do hear you, and we try to when you give us good suggestions, we try to follow up on them. Many of you asked for this opportunity to meet the new leaders in Georgetown County, and we reached out to those new leaders, and they were very kind to say that they would join us today. They're all here, and we have invited our friend and Georgetown native, Dr. Tracy Bailey, to be our facilitator this morning. Many of you know Tracy not only as a native Georgetonian, but as the founder and executive director of Freedom Readers, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. So Tracy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Gilles, and good morning, everyone. I am just thrilled to be here with everyone at today's event, Building a Brighter Tomorrow. First, I'd like to thank the Bunnelle Foundation for hosting this wonderful event. I'd like to thank Gilles and the staff for your commitment to the people of Georgetown. And thank you for this opportunity to allow all of us to have a better understanding of our landscape here, which helps us all feel more assured that tomorrow will indeed be brighter. So let's go ahead and hear from our panelists. I'd like for all of you to introduce yourselves and just tell us what was the thing that drew you to Georgetown or drew you to your position in Georgetown. Sandra, why don't we start with you?
Yes, thank you, Tracy. I'm Sandra Yudice, and I am the city administrator for the city of Georgetown. What drew me to this position was the needs of the community. When I came and scout the city, I saw there was a lot of needs, especially on the west end of the city. So that's what actually drew me. The needs of revitalization, the social needs, improving the level of poverty, lowering it. That was one of the needs that I saw.
Thank you, Sandra, and we are so glad that you're here and are a part of the Georgetown community. Angela, let's hear from you next.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you. I am the new administrator of Georgetown County. I've been here a little over 4 months, and what a 4 months it's been. I started at the very beginning of the pandemic to the just recent hurricane, and we've had a tornado in between. We've had couple of different crises, all a part of my time at Georgetown County. And I said when I first started, I said, well, give me your best shot. This wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I started, but it's been quite a journey in the 4 months that we've been here. And oh my goodness, have we changed a lot with the way that we do business. So very excited to be here. Probably one of the main reasons I think that I came to Georgetown, first of all, it's a beautiful area. Certainly a place that you want to come to and just enjoy just living here. But then having the great opportunity to be the county administrator of such a diverse and culturally rich community that has really been the icing on the cake. My husband would probably say the golf courses, but I just say it's just been a great place to be.
Well, Angela, on behalf of the Georgetown community, I'd like to welcome you as well. And I know this has been a very interesting time for you so far, but I believe that you're doing well and you look like you're weathering the storm. Right?
Absolutely.
So speaking of storms, let's hear from Brandon. Why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know about what drew you to Georgetown?
Good morning. My name is Brandon Ellis. I'm the Emergency Services Director for Georgetown County. I started my adventure with Georgetown County many years ago when I was working for the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. And, you know, upon the retirement of my predecessor, I could not pick a better place to call home. So we chose to anchor ourselves in Georgetown County. We love the deep heritage and deep history and all of the cultural aspects of Georgetown, as well as the abundance of natural resources and as well as the opportunities for my family and children that Georgetown County provides. So we're happy to be here and happy to serve the community and keep them safe on a daily basis.
Well, Brandon, we are so glad that you are here, especially right after having gone through that hurricane experience last week. So thank you so much for all that you do to help us all stay safe and feel very certain and secure about what's going on around us. Keith, let's hear from you next.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, and I appreciate the Bunnelle Foundation for the invitation to be here today. And so I'm honored to be here as the new superintendent for Georgetown County School District. And the question as to why I'm interested in Georgetown County, or why I was, Georgetown County checked a lot of boxes for me and my family. First of all, it's a great place to live. There are so many different things to do to get your family involved in. And I look forward to doing those as things reopen, as conditions improved and safe gathering begins to happen again. So I'm looking forward to that. In addition to that, the school district has such a variety and diverse group of schools throughout. You've got urban schools, you've got rural schools, and you've got suburban schools. So regardless of what you're looking for in a school experience for you and your family, Georgetown County offers that right here. And in addition to that, the school board that's here, it's a 9-member board. And whenever I was considering this opportunity, I asked about the school board, and it has a very positive reputation for being a collaborative and collegial and supportive school board. So with all those things that I just mentioned, Georgetown County School District checked all of those boxes for me, and I'm just delighted and honored to be here.
Well, we are delighted and honored to have you here as well, Keith. Since your mic is still hot, I'm just going to jump in here and ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
As you know, a lot of people in our community are thinking about the upcoming school year, and some questions were submitted ahead of time, and a few people are interested in your thoughts on how we can safely and successfully educate our students during this time. So would you talk a little bit about your reopening plan?
Sure thing. And that's a long conversation. So there are so many different pieces that are going on. So I'll try to squeeze it into more of a Reader's Digest version. Whenever I first joined the district back in the middle of June, we quickly pulled together a task force made up of a lot of different stakeholders, both employees, parents, students, board members, teachers, counselors, administrators. We wanted a variety of perspectives to take a look at how we could do exactly what you just asked about. How can we operate schools in a safe and efficient manner? And so we came up with a plan that all of these task force members and different committees pulled together. And so basically we came up with 2 different options. One option is for those families who are ready to commit to a complete virtual experience to get started. And so everything they do for the entire first semester will be in an all virtual online format. Teachers will be teaching online, assignments will be given online, tests will be given online, everything is online. So that's for those families who are not ready to come back to school until conditions improve. They wanted to go that route. The other option is a phase-in option, and there are 3 different phases. There's remote phase, hybrid phase, and prime phase. And those 3 phases that we operate in are determined by our risk of disease spread in our county based on weekly reports that we receive from DHEC. And so when our risk rating is high, our operating phase is called remote. And so that means that all students and teachers will be in a remote setting, very similar to what our all virtual program is going to be. Everything is done remotely and online. As conditions improve and our risk rating improves from high risk to medium risk, we then shift into our hybrid mode. And our hybrid mode means that we take those students that are not in the all virtual program and we split them into two groups, A group and B group. Each group will come to school on designated days. So A group students will be in school while B group students are learning remotely, and vice versa. So A group students will have 2 days a week of in-person instruction and 3 days a week of remote. And B group is the same way. Their days of in-person instruction are not on the same days. So that's kind of a hybrid mix. And then as conditions improve to low risk, then we would be ready to move to what's called prime phase. And that's back to what we all know school to be. That's 5 days of in-person instruction while also putting safety measures in place to try to ensure social distancing to the extent possible, as well as other safety and cleaning measures that we'll have in place. So that's kind of in a nutshell what our two phases are, our two options are.
Right, wonderful. Well, it does sound like I believe you mentioned earlier that that plan was submitted to the State Department and has been approved at this point.
Yes, and things change, and sometimes they change week to week. Sometimes it's one day to the next, and sometimes it changes a couple of times within the same day. So when we created that plan and submitted it, our plan was based on guidance from the state's the state level task force. So after we submitted it, they said, yeah, we'll approve your plan, but there's a contingency. We want you ready to move to hybrid phase by September 14th. Well, that's a little bit different based on our risk rating. So it was approved, and we said that we were going to announce our opening phase on August 10th, and that we would petition the State Department for a waiver to remain in our remote phase unless conditions improve. So we announced our opening phase last night, and right now it's for the week of September 8th. And we've already submitted that waiver to allow us to stay in remote phase if our risk ratings do not improve. So hopefully we'll get that response back soon, and we'll be able to announce our operating phase from week 2 on. But right now we've just announced that we are, our opening phase for week 1 is going to be remote. And some early feedback that I got this morning on the drive into work says that that contingency is going to change once again. So I'm waiting to get the official word on that, and then we'll share the latest update with all of our stakeholders at that time.
Thank you,
things continue to change. So this is a very fluid situation in the world of education.
Well, it does sound like an evolving process. So thank you so much for updating us on where we are now. And we will definitely stay tuned on how things are changing. Angela, my next question is for you. I know that all of our leaders in Georgetown work together, and your leadership is integrated on some level. And Keith told us what has been really occupying his mind over the last few weeks. Angela, tell us what are the things at the top of your priority agenda right now, and what you think success in your role as county administrator will look like 12 months from now?
Wow, what a great question. I think there are a couple of things that come to mind. Kind of the priorities I had at the very beginning, since we are in this time of pandemic, have shifted. And I think probably one of the most important things I'm doing right now is preparing the organization to be more fluid, transition, because it does change from week to week, month to month on what we're doing. We weren't doing teleworking. Now we do. We've had to upgrade our technology to be able to do that, to give folks the opportunity to work from home, because folks are having to make decisions about what to do with their kids during the summer break and now as school begins. Like many other employers, our workforce has been impacted by folks having COVID and what that means, and offices are closed, And now folks have to have appointments. And it's a very different way that we have to do business. So one of the things I learned before I came here taught me from the Marines that we will adapt and overcome. And I think that is very much a part of what we have been doing. What success looks like, I think it depends. Before I got here, I probably would have told you, well, this is what I want economic development to look like. This is what I want technology to look like in the county. Here's some projects we've been talking about for a long time, and this is what we're going to do now, what those plans look like. This is what our new strategic plan is going to look like. That's kind of on hold just a minute because we've got to deal with these everyday things that kind of impede us from doing our daily mission of serving the residents and our visitors that come to our community. So working with my counterparts that are on the call today and with organizations of the community, I've tried to say that this is certainly a time for planning and really taking a hard look at what our priorities need to be as we move forward. Because I think we're going to have to be more flexible. I had someone recently, I said, unfortunately, we may still be talking about pandemic and what happens 6 months from now, and preparing our organization to be much more flexible than it ever has been before, and making sure that we can provide different services that we have. There's a great one that we've been working with that the library has been doing for some time, and this pushing, you can check out hotspots from the library. What a cool idea for us to be able to do during this time. So what we do has changed.
Well, Angela, thank you so much for touching on the topic of technology. Many of our participants are very concerned about making sure that all of our Georgetown County residents have access to technology during this time.
Yes.
Because as you said earlier, you know, teleworking and being able to attend school remotely is something that is very important to just about everyone in our community. So making sure that we have strong plans and make progress in that particular area is something that I know that we want to see happen. So thank you so much for focusing on that as well.
Thank you.
Sandra, our next question is for you. As you know, not only are we as a country or even as a planet experiencing a pandemic right now, but we're also really dealing with issues of racial equity and injustice. Since the killing of George Floyd, there have been many protests, not only here, but around the world. In the last few years, we've talked about the Me Too movement. We hear the expression Black Lives Matter very often. So Sandra, can you speak to me a little bit about what you are planning to do proactively to make sure that issues of racial equity and social justice are addressed by the city of Georgetown?
Yes, thank you. On that aspect, I think diversity education is very important. What I have observed in the city is that there is a lack of diversity education, and we need to increase that to include everybody. In that regard, Chief Waits has been discussing with the nonprofit organizations and the minority groups here in the city. And we have discussions also with the Sheriff's Department on those demonstrations. The one that was scheduled, there were 2 that were scheduled, and on both of them we also participated, not from the protest side, but just to make sure that those that were demonstrating were safe. In that regard also, I think both or the 3 groups, Caucasians, African American, Latinos, Asians, or the entire community need to come together and perhaps create a forum where this dialogue can occur. We don't want to be portrayed as having a police department that is using use of force. We have revised our policy. Of the 7 policies that were recommended, we had 6 of them already in place, and just 1 that we had to revise. So that was a good side from the city, that we had those 6 policies already in place. But yet, diversity education is very important, so that we know that diversity brings different perspectives. And the more you know about the other groups, the more understanding it could be within the community. Yes.
Thank you, Sandra. We definitely agree that we need to have more conversations about diversity, and education is going to be a very important part of helping us move forward. So thank you for your input on that. Brandon, I think this next question is a little bit of a follow-up on what Sandra just talked about. But if we look at the landscape of Georgetown County in general, we will see that there is a bit of a disparity between the levels of wealth and the background of people who might live on the Waccamaw Neck versus people who live maybe on the West End or in the rural areas of the county. Brandon, can you talk about a little bit about the differences between how you approach emergency management or even preparing for a huge storm event, and how those plans might affect those different parts of our county in various ways?
Absolutely. We obviously have a very vast landscape, not just from a topography perspective, but also from a community and socio-demographic perspective across the county. And we take that into consideration when we're planning for events and emergencies such as tropical cyclones, since that's the flavor of the week, it seems, since we're in the midst of the season. You know, obviously we have to look at things about available resources, both from a response standpoint as well as a recovery. And we have to remain aware that not everyone has access to the same level of resources or capabilities to evacuate, prepare themselves, or even recover from a major event. And unfortunately, FEMA's not always going to be there for some of these smaller events to help with that. So we are very reliant upon our private nonprofit partners that we have, our voluntary organizations that are active during disaster, or BOAD, COAD, community organizations active in disaster. We tightly integrate with them and rely on them to assist whenever that federal or state level of assistance is not available. For instance, you know, our April 13th tornadoes that Angela mentioned earlier, that did not meet the threshold for federal assistance. So we had to coordinate with our partners, specifically over at Black River United Way, and you know, put folks in touch with them who needed assistance, because there was no other means of assistance available to patch roofs, do repairs, and things of that nature. So we try to remain aware of, you know, the differences in scope throughout our county. As you mentioned, you know, disasters impact everyone differently. So we take a whole community approach whenever we're planning, and we try to make it all encompassing of the dynamics across the entire county.
Thank you, Brandon. That sounds like a really important plan to have in place to be able to address the needs as they exist and where they exist. Keith, this next question is coming back around to you. So just kind of continuing on this theme that we're talking about in terms of social justice. We know that COVID-19 has impacted the African American and Hispanic community probably a lot more significantly than any of the other racial demographics that we can look at around the country. One of the questioners submitted a question about how we will look at those impacts on those particular communities and make sure that they don't manifest themselves in a large academic gap in the future. So if you could talk a little bit about, number one, learning loss in terms of the times that school was closed, because we know that school can be a lot, can serve a lot of the needs of the people that I just mentioned. And talk to me a little bit about how that learning loss is going to be addressed in the years to come.
Sure thing. That's a great question. And that's one of our biggest concerns in the education world. You know, whenever school buildings closed back in March, new learning and forward learning kind of hit the pause button. And we were directed by the State Department to kind of slow things down. Don't look at pushing forward. Let's talk about grace over grades. Let's stay connected with our students and give them some activities to keep them fresh and to keep them sharp. So we did not get through a year's worth of learning activities last year. So from March until the first week of June, there wasn't a great deal of new learning taking place. But as we prepare to start the new school year, we can't do that again. Our families don't want that anymore. They're ready to move forward. Our students are ready to move forward, and our teachers are ready to embark on new learning activities with students. So we will be moving forward, and learning will be progressing from day one on. At the same time, we've got to take a look at where are our learning losses and where are our gaps. So what we have been asked to do, and we are already planning to do this, is we're going to be doing some pre-assessments for all of our students in grades 1 through 9 in the first 10 days of school. And we'll be using that information to identify where students should be compared to where they are. And as we work on our schedule, as we're moving forward, we're going to have several days that are going to be focused on new learning, but one day of every week is going to be focused on remediation and intervention so that we can identify those learning loss areas, the assistance that's needed, and really work with individual students to help bring them along. So that's going to continue probably throughout the year, because as you can imagine, not only are we faced with the challenges of recovering that learning loss, but we are also trying to move our students forward and get them back on track. So there's more information that's being expected of our teachers to try to get students to close that gap. So I don't see this effort being contained in 1 year. This is probably going to take a sustained effort over the next couple of years so we can keep moving forward while also plugging those gaps in that learning slide. So I know that the Bunnelle Foundation has a lot of support, and I'm still learning about all the great things that the Bunnelle Foundation provides, but it's going to take a village to make this happen, because it's not just something that can happen in our schools. Our teachers are miracle workers. I've seen them do incredible things, but it's going to take all of us working together to help close those gaps and get our students moving forward again. But I don't think it's an impossible task. And even if it were, I've seen our teachers conquer the impossible time and time again.
Thank you, Keith. I absolutely agree with you when you say that it is going to take a village, because I believe that the issues that we're facing in our county and our communities right now are issues that we all need to come together and address, because no one entity can do it all. So Angela, my question is for you next. Thinking about coming together in a partnership kind of way and working shoulder to shoulder, would you talk a little bit to the participants on this call, because many of them are nonprofit leaders or involved in nonprofit organizations. Could you talk a little bit about what you see the role of nonprofits being in helping our community move forward, and how nonprofits can take steps to create partnerships with the county?
Absolutely. I think it's important to mention that our nonprofit partners and agencies in our community, they fulfill gaps, certainly because Georgetown County can't be everything to everybody. As we discuss with emergency management, we certainly see the need for nonprofits to fill in the gaps where the government basically doesn't have a spot. We don't have that skill set of folks that have that. And certainly there are folks that are very good in helping when monies aren't available, they don't meet the deductible, all those things that happen as a part of emergency management. I see the role of nonprofits certainly as a good place to start is with our Park and Rec program. I know a lot of organizations partner with them for their various activities, for our senior citizen programs, partnering again with this, but also some community groups with looking at things for economic development, job development, internships, all those different kinds of activities that I can think we can be very good partners to help folks. One of the things I have found since being here just over 4 months is there's not a whole lot of money. All of our budgets are tight. There's not a whole lot of money that we have sometimes, but we do have workplaces and work opportunities that folks have been able to step into, that we've been able to give some folks some assistance to be able to do some things. From dealing with YMCA to all Red Cross, United Way, the Bunnelle Foundation, all these different folks that we are looking to help us with the various opportunities to make our community a great place to live, to work, and to play.
Thank you, Angela. That is really good to know that those partnerships can definitely be created, although we understand that all of us are dealing with tight budgets. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Speaking of tight budgets, Sandra, my next question is for you. This conversation that we're having now is a little bit different than a conversation that we would have had back in February or March when the pandemic first started to blossom in our communities. So what's happening now is we know that there was a moratorium on evictions and there was an additional $600 in unemployment for families, and those things are coming to an end. So my question for you as a city administrator, are you making plans or bracing in any way for a spike in poverty or poverty-related issues due to the fact that some of these things are happening?
I would say yes, because of these additional unemployment benefits are coming to an end or have come to an end. Of course, we will have some spikes in the, or increasing the gap in the poverty. And with that, what we are trying to do in the joining with the county, we have entered into a memorandum of understanding about deploying some economic development efforts to the point that the city does not have an economic development department, and the county was gracious enough to allow us to partner with them and ask the director for the county to assist us with recruiting efforts in our, for the city, bringing retail, commercial, all sorts of economic development businesses. And that will, the purpose of that is to increase the job availability for our residents. And with that, we expect to have some successes. Thank you to Angela for helping us with that. And on the budget side, if I may answer expand on that. Yes, we had to unfortunately cut some of the budget that we presented originally back in March with the City Council. We had to cut it in the tune of a little more than $1 million to the through the end of the budget process. So yes, we're very cautious on that, and but we're trying to do everything that we can with the city to maintain our workforce healthy. Like Angela, in the county, we have had a few instances where employees have being contracted, but we are managing and we are doing everything that we can to maintain our workforce healthy within the means of our financial resources. And with that, what we have asked our elected official is to contact our Congress delegation to assist with the financial resources packages that they are dealing with now, to provide that direct assistance to the cities, the small cities. The only jurisdiction in the state that was able to get that direct assistance was Greenville County in the upstate. Other than that, everybody else, we are on our own, and we need to manage those resources very carefully.
Wow. So Georgetown wasn't in that pool with Greenville, I hear. So
no,
yeah.
The threshold was only jurisdictions above 500,000 in population would get that direct assistance. And my understanding is that those jurisdictions have been able to assist small businesses, whereas Georgetown, we have in the county 6,000 plus, and in the city is a lot less. We have close to 9,000 residents. But it's very unfortunately that happened, because that tells us that we are on this on our own.
Mm-hmm. So Sandra, I am very hopeful that in the future, one of our standards of measurement will be the level of poverty in our communities versus the size of our population. So hopefully that will be one of the shifts that we see happening as we move toward the end of the year into next year.
That would be ideal. That would be ideal. And part of that, we had planned for the city, we had planned to begin our strategic planning in the spring, but when the pandemic hit and the social distancing and everything closing, so we postponed it. So I am planning on making those, if we can, making those face-to-face community meetings sometime in the fall, maybe late September, October, depending on how the pandemic goes, because we want to have the input from the community as to what does the residents want the city to look like in 10, 20, 30 years. And with that, in my research about the poverty level here, I found that it's 34% in the city, and that is not acceptable. We need to increase the level of income levels, decrease the poverty levels, narrow that gap between the haves and the have-nots.
I absolutely agree. And I think that with a concerted effort, with all of us on the same team and on the same page, we'll see progress in that area. So thank you for your leadership, Sandra. Brandon, my next question is for you. We've been talking now for about half an hour, and we've touched on lots of different topics. We've gone from talking about poverty to social justice to school reopening. So Brandon, this is a little bit of a wide open question for you. What is it that keeps you up at night, Brandon?
Besides a 1-year-old, lots of things. Just worrying about the community. Obviously thinking about we're in the prime of hurricane season, so that is our narrow focus at the moment, although we have many other things on our plate. Just ensuring that our community is prepared and that we're ready to as an emergency services unit across the county, and that takes the partnerships of not only the departments that belong to the county, but also our partnerships with our partners and stakeholders with the city, as well as other areas such as Merle's Inlet, Garden City, and so on, and the town of Andrews. So just ensuring that we have those partnerships in place and that everyone is prepared and lockstep and ready to go. We're entering the prime peak of hurricane season, and we had our little brush last week, which we were very blessed and fortunate yet again to skate through another close encounter. But our luck's going to run out one day, and ensuring that we are prepared to respond and have the appropriate resources either in the county or on the way prepared to deploy to the county prior to that landfall is going to be very, very important to our success of not only protecting our citizens and our community, but also the infrastructure that we need to come back and recover. We have a very resilient community, which does help me sleep well at night. Just based off of that, our people know how to recover. But unfortunately, we haven't seen a major disaster such as Hugo since 1989. We've had our brushes, but those are things that kind of keep me awake at night or early in the morning. It depends on how you look at it. But they're the things that occupy my mind and really drive my critical thinking in those wee hours.
Well, Brandon, you mentioned Hurricane Hugo, and I was definitely in Georgetown County when Hurricane Hugo came through on that end, right where it kind of was the most powerful, where the eye came across. And I tell you, that's an event that I will never, ever forget. And I've got some friends in the area who have experienced an event a few days ago that they won't forget. There was an earthquake. Did you all know this? Yeah. So as emergency management director, do you have any plans for this area? I mean, I'm sure that you have tons of plans on hurricanes. As my friend Jill says, they're hurricanes. But Brandon, can you tell me a little bit about an earthquake? Are we on a fault, or should we be getting ready and trying to put basements in our homes so that we can be ready for the next big earthquake?
Well, we are very, very close to the fault lines, actually. There's a few fault lines that run through the area. The closest major fault line is in the Somerville area. And as far as planning, yes, our comprehensive emergency operations plan does have an appendix that addresses specifically earthquake response. So we are prepared for it. We talk about it, even though a lot of folks don't like to talk about it. And I think since I've come here, I've scared a few folks just with the conversation of earthquakes and the possibility. But Sunday morning made that a realization for us that it happened that close and up around Mount Airy, North Carolina, and just showed the magnitude. Obviously, we are more susceptible to greater damage along the coast because of what they call liquefaction, where the land basically turns to water in those large major earthquakes. And we have some maps and planning tools that we have in place that show those hot areas and where we can anticipate that should we experience another earthquake such as the one in Charleston in August of 1886. So we have our plans in place. We have resources. Unfortunately, bridges are very susceptible to earthquakes. So if the earthquake were to strike and I was at home, I would be asking Angela to be able to work remotely, telecommute for the foreseeable future, because it would be hard to drive across that Waccamaw Bridge. But, we have plans in place. We have our resources spread across the county, and we could adequately respond should that same situation happen to us.
So Brandon, am I hearing you say that we all need to invest in a boat if we don't have one yet?
Maybe we could bring back the old ferry system that was years ago that I've seen photos of. But obviously that is one of the downfalls of the Waccamaw Neck area is we have that one way in, one way out of the greater Georgetown area. But it's infrastructure is infrastructure, and all we can do is contingency plan for it.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for being on top of those plans and for looking into the future and making sure that we're prepared no matter what type of an event that we experience as a community. Keith, this next question is for you. I know we heard you talk a little bit about assessments happening in schools in order to address any types of learning disparities or deficiencies that might take place. And you said that would happen for children in grades 1 to 9, I believe. Am I right in remembering that correctly?
That's correct.
So what I'd like for you to speak about for the next couple of minutes, Keith, is what is your perspective on early learning, and what role does that play in our work in Georgetown and in your work as superintendent for those children who are from birth to age 5?
Oh, I think it's critically important because oftentimes the success of a student is dependent upon their early learning experiences before they ever get to us in kindergarten, which is why we're trying to expand our 4K program. And there's even been discussion about expanding it into a 3K program. The more educational experiences that we can offer our young children, the better we're going to equip them for a successful launch and a successful academic career as long as they're in school or college. So early intervention, lots of reading, all of that is critically important for the development of a child in their early years. And unfortunately, our students that begin with us, once they walk through our doors, we're going to give them the best educational experience that we can provide for them. But not all students come to us with the same experiences when they start. And so that's why different groups and different organizations such as First Steps can help us bridge that gap to make sure our students are prepared for a successful launch. But the early years are critically important for the long-term success of a student.
I agree with you. Thank you so much, Keith. Angela, this next question is yours. I believe throughout our conversation, I've noticed a number of your colleagues refer to their relationship with you. So I want you to talk a little bit about how the four of you who are on this call really work together and the importance of the integration of your leadership efforts. I'm sure there are other people in the county who are also very integral in this relationship and making sure that we have all of our plans in place and are moving forward. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I saw the mayor of Georgetown join us a couple of times during this call. I might have been the only one to see him. But Angela, talk a little bit about that working together relationship and how important it is.
I am a huge fan of collaboration. As you mentioned earlier, it takes a village to raise children. Well, it takes collaboration to raise a community. And I think that is, since most of us are relatively new to the community, it takes us having a relationship because there's certainly overlap. We have employees that work for all the various organizations, or their spouses, or their parents work here and their kids go to school. So there's overlap and opportunity for collaboration between us. And we've already begun to have those discussions between our organizations. Sandra talked earlier about a collaboration we're already doing with economic development. There be also things that we're doing with the school system, looking at recreation facilities. There are things, of course, that we're doing with Brandon and emergency management. And the opportunity to work with those nonprofits that that are so important to the rhythm of the community to keep things going, certainly in the midst of a crisis. And I continue to look for those opportunities to partner and work one-on-one, work collectively with the things that we can do. If nothing else, just to feature an organization to make sure that the folks that we have in the county know that these resources exist, and where we need to refer people, help folks out so we know where to send folks to when folks come and ask us, do you know of any resources that can help us when we can't fill the gap? So we will continue to do that. There's certainly one that we're looking at right now, dealing with housing. We recognize that we have a shortage of housing, and it's affecting economic development. And I'm sure it in turn will affect where schools are and what impact it can have on a particular school as development continues to look at our area. So we will continue to collaborate. We'll continue to look for partners, and I look forward to strengthening our relationships with all of our partners.
Thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate that mindset of just getting together with the people who are willing to do the work and who want to do the work. And I know that's an important thing. I also know that it's always better for the health of our community when our leaders can play well together. So I'm so glad that you all are such a good, tight-knit community. That's wonderful. Sandra, this next question is for you. If I'm not mistaken, a part of your role as the city administrator is to try to recruit new businesses. I know that the Bunnelle Foundation was concerned, or is still concerned, with having the talent of our young people stay in our community instead of seeing those people move somewhere else. And that's only going to happen if we can offer them good jobs. So one of the questions that was submitted has to do with that recruitment effort of new businesses to the city and what kind of conversations we have with those businesses about making sure that they offer salaries and wages that are really attractive to young people and can lead to a sustainable type lifestyle.
Yes, absolutely. The recruitment of businesses in a community is very important, and not only for the increased number of jobs, but also the quality of those jobs. In our collaborative efforts with the county, we try to emphasize the recruitment of professional firms. And with that, I would say like accounting businesses, firms from in the engineering field, architect field, investment fields, tech, if that is possible. But like with Angela just mentioned, the lack of housing and the lack of sites that are available, shovel-ready sites, is very important that we address those issues. There are sites that are empty, vacant lots, vacant buildings, buildable lots, buildings that can be renovated, rehabilitated to attract those kinds of businesses. It is very important, not just the retail side, because we all know most of those businesses don't pay a high salary as opposed to those professional firms. If you look at our neighbors in Charleston, for example, they have attracted the tech industry into the North Charleston area. So that's what will drive the increase in the income and decrease the poverty levels. Again, I'm with Keith, we need to increase our education levels too. With just the industries, high-paying industries like manufacturing, that's another niche that we can tackle on. We recently, well, last year, Council was gracious to sell that Eagle Electric property, and we had the Green, Mr. Green is renovating that facility for a light manufacturing. The purpose of that site is also to bring in additional spec buildings, to build them and attract more light manufacturing industry in that area. So those are the things that we need to work on and collaborate. And I just cannot thank Angela and the county council enough for assisting the city in that regard.
Okay, wonderful. Brandon, I think this next question is for you, and this probably is the last question that I have on my list for you. And I don't necessarily have a strong background in emergency management or the way that our environment kind of affects the economy, but we've had a question come in, and I hope that you'll be able to understand what this question is referring to. Do you know, or any of the panelists, if you have information on this, where do the plans stand for relocating the water intake from the Waccamaw due to increasing salt concentration? Does anyone have any background on that environmental question that was presented to us? Fortunately,
I do know in an emergency situation, you know, we can leverage mechanisms if we need to do desalination of water sources so that we can provide fresh water. There are mechanisms for that, but as far as a permanent solution, I'm not. It wouldn't really be in my spectrum. That would be more of a Georgetown County Water Sewer Authority type question. Okay, well, it does make me think of another question. I know that flooding has been a major issue in our county for the last few years. It seems as if in the last 5 years, we've had a 100-year flood just about every year. So my question is, is there anything that we can do to help alleviate the flooding issues in our area, in the Georgetown area? And
how do you suggest that our participants prepare for a flood that might happen as a result of a slow-moving hurricane or some other weather event?
I know that through some partnership through state emergency management, the city has engaged some grant funding, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Sandra, that will help alleviate and provide some mitigatory efforts for the flooding situation. A lot of the infrastructure is just very, very old and has not been able to keep up with the growth and development of the area. As far as preparedness, folks can take basic preparedness precautionary measures and begin taking their personal preparedness personal. Develop a plan, have a plan in place. If you know you live in a flood-prone area, identify ways that you can mitigate that whenever a situation presents, whether it is raising flood-prone items off of a floor, if it's an outdoor storage unit or something of that nature that may be susceptible to some baseline street-level flooding. But also just looking at ways that you can improve your property. It may be as simple as filling in low spots in your property to help alleviate some of the flood situations, developing flood barriers through different mechanisms. There are tons and tons of commercial products available that provide flood barrier for doorways and things of that nature. In the end, just ensuring that you're prepared and you know what hazards you're vulnerable to so that you can plan and prepare appropriately and take those actions early. Don't wait until it's too late and you're behind the 8 ball.
Brandon, do we need to have sandbags on the ready at all times?
Sandbags are a tricky ordeal. Sandbags can be effective if they're properly installed, and to be properly installed, it takes a lot of sandbags to appropriately conduct a flood fight mission. Some of our folks are very successful in keeping water out of business fronts and things of that nature with sandbags, but a large scale flood fight mission require an astronomical amount of sandbags to be successful. We look at other alternatives, but for those isolated cases, yes, sandbags can be ready. We live on the coast. Sea level rise is a real thing and it's happening, and we're going to continue to see impacts from flooding, both freshwater and saltwater flooding, unfortunately, for the foreseeable future.
Okay, great. So I guess I won't rush out of here and fill up a sandbag today, but I'll keep it in the back of my mind. Brandon, I said that was the last question that I had for you today, but I don't want you to take too much of a deep breath because I'm keeping an eye on the chat box, and there may be a couple of questions that pop up over there. We've been talking now for about an hour, and I'm glad that you all have set aside just a little bit of additional time for us to take some of the questions that pop up in the chat box right now. But thank you so much, Brandon. You've been very, very informative and very kind. Angela, I have a question for you. This question has popped up in the chat box a couple minutes ago, and it referenced the community of Murrells Inlet as one of the major economic drivers in Georgetown County. And the questioner is saying that they believe that there could be a little bit more investment in their recreational facilities and other things in the area. So I guess this particular question could apply to other communities in the area as well. How do you ensure that the kind of attention that a community receives in the county is even and that none of our communities are overlooked?
Wow, what a great question. I think probably one of the big issues that I've faced since I've been here is really dealing with equity of resources across the whole county. I think when the county developed the regional recreation facilities, that was one of the things they were very much in favor, after much study, of doing regional centers, so that it's not neighborhood based anymore, that they're doing it at a regional level, of looking at what's the same things are provided in every region of the county. And with the last sales tax we've had, we have completed that. What comes next, of course, is that folks want additional things that are added. And there's certainly some discussion on the staff level of what that looks like and what's the next phase of recreational activities that we will provide across the county. By far, it definitely is a challenge to ensure that we are equitable. Yes, Burroughs Inlet is very much, but it's also about space that's available, land that's available, what kinds of things work for the community at large, that we can provide the service at a reasonable expenditure rate, knowing the budget situation and what we're looking for next. None of these things are free. As we've talked about, we are entering a phase, I think, of tight budgets for the next couple of years. So we do have some planning time to take a look at that, but we are certainly open and we are ready to talk to citizens that have some ideas about the types of activities that they would like to see that are provided across all regions.
Thank you, Angela. So it's wonderful to hear that just everyday citizens can actually communicate with you and let you know their concerns and have a dialogue about what it is that they'd like to see happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So that would be just a simple email or a phone call, and
absolutely.
That would be the best way to handle that.
Yes, I am talking directly to folks every day.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. So Angela, that may come around to the last question for you as well, but don't sit too far back in your chair, because I do see the chat box heating up just a little bit and there's some questions coming up. Okay. I'm going to shuffle over here to Keith just a little bit and ask him one of the last questions we have for him today. Keith, we talked earlier about issues of equity in terms of race, and I wonder if you would speak a little bit about how the district, the Georgetown County School District, is staffed and how the racial makeup of the schools and the district office itself compares with the racial makeup of the actual students that attend school in the district, and how you intend to address any disparities that might exist.
Sure, and I appreciate that. That's a conscious effort that we have, and we have already begun to look at our hiring practices, especially for more leadership type positions. And we've created interviews through panels, and we are making sure that our interview panels are diverse in demographic makeup as well as experiences. And so one of the things that we're consciously trying to do is to hire more of a workforce that represents the community that we serve. I think that the more diverse we are, the better we are as a community. And so students need to be able to learn from people who look like them and from people who don't look like them. Those who have different experiences in life, as well as in religion. I think the more diverse that we can be and the wider of a range that we can expose our students to, they're going to be better because of it. I have personal experiences of people that I've had in my own life. I have 4 daughters who, and some of their favorite teachers of all time don't look like them. They're a different gender, they're a different race, they're a different nationality. So I think that the more diverse that we can create our workforce, the better off we will be as a community. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we're trying to do, but we're also increasing working on increasing our recruiting efforts. We're having to recruit differently than we ever have before, because we want to make sure that we're recruiting those diverse candidates that also meet our high expectations. We don't want to sacrifice quality for the sake of demographic diversity. We want to make sure that we get great candidates. And so we're reevaluating right now the way we recruit people into our area, so that of all different demographics and diverse folks, that we attract the best and the brightest who want to come be a part of our school district.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that there is a concerted effort around diversifying the workforce and recruiting those people that really are qualified and can represent lots of different areas of our backgrounds in this diverse community. So thank you for saying that, Keith. Keith, I'd like to applaud you for being on top of the chat box and noticing that some of those questions in there are addressed to you and just going in and typing your answers. So you're being proactive, sir, and I very much appreciate that. Bodes well for the school year. Thank you so much. Sandra, this may be the last question that I have for you today, and this question just popped up on the chat box, so I'll just go ahead and read it to you and you can just address this. I know that you mentioned earlier that housing was something that was very important to you at this time, and one of the questioners or the participants in our discussion today, they want to know if the city's considered changing some of the regulations or restrictions that limit building affordable housing in the city of Georgetown.
I would say yes. We have been exploring changes in the zoning code, especially in the West End area, because there are small lots that, according to our current zoning setbacks, would not allow to build a house that meets those setback requirements. So we are exploring those, and we are planning on bringing those revisions to the zoning ordinance to City Council in the near future. There are also options. There is a movement throughout the nation about those tiny houses, communities, and those have been very successful. And I'm aware that there are a couple of those communities in South Carolina that I'm researching to see if that's something that Georgetown could accommodate. So yes, housing is an issue. Affordable housing is more than an issue, because like I mentioned before, the poverty rate here in the city is very high, and not everybody can afford a house to live here. There are also some apartment complexes that we have received issue permits for. There is one actually being built for seniors in the West End area near the Housing Authority complex. And there are also others that we had issued permits, but because of the pandemic, that development has come to a stop. But yes, we are looking into that issue, into the housing issue. Yes.
Yes. So I think that's probably one of your greatest priorities at this point. So because I think I've heard everyone on the call kind of reference how important it is to our work to have affordable housing. So thank you for doing that. Brandon, I told you weren't off the hot seat yet. In our Q&A, I saw a question just now that wants to know how high on your list of priorities is climate change?
It's obviously up pretty high because it's influencing a lot of things that we deal with on a daily basis, from our, obviously the sea level rise that we're seeing down to the intensity and the strength and the frequency of hurricanes. It plays an extreme factor in everything that we deal with from a tropical standpoint down to a meteorological standpoint. So we're very conscious of it. We're beginning to explore ways that we can further examine it and learn more about how climate change is impacting our daily activities, as well as what we need to prepare for in the future. Looking at trends of how tropical cyclones have become stronger over years, how flooding, as you mentioned earlier, has become more prevalent in areas that we have not seen, into magnitudes we have not seen before. So taking all of that and trying to source that data and find a way that we can use that to more effectively plan for our community and make them better prepared is definitely a high priority for our office.
So number 3, number 5? No, I'm just, you don't have to say.
Right now, with all the little red dots floating around in the Atlantic Ocean, I'd say probably about 2 or 3. But it's definitely, we are very aware of it and make a conscious effort to include that as a consideration in everything that we plan for that has a natural aspect, as a natural hazard.
Wonderful. Good to know that climate change is up there on the list. Angela, quick question for you. I saw you lean forward in your chair, so you must have been anticipating this question. One of our nonprofit leaders wrote about a wonderful program that they have to bring down the unemployment rate and train people for jobs. And this person wants to know what they should do to get that information out to the general population of Georgetown County. How do nonprofit leaders go about letting people know about their programs? Because I know that you mentioned earlier that you'd like to be an assistant in that regard.
We have a great PIO team that we're really kind of repurposing and using more during this pandemic time. And with that, I certainly see an opportunity for us to highlight some nonprofits as we are having various programs. We've talked about us being a greater force in the community with using our public platform to get more information out from nonprofits about nonprofits and the services that they provide. So if they'll be patient with us just a little bit longer, we'll be able to give them some guidelines about how they can reach out to us and how we can provide them a platform to be able to get the word out in the community.
So Angela, we'll all be excited to hear more about that, and we'll definitely be on the lookout and keep our ear to the ground for more information about that platform. That's a great thing. So it looks like we've come to the end of our list of questions now. I think that I would definitely like to say that this has been a very robust conversation, and we've really put a lot of information out there on the table. I'd like to give each of you about 30 seconds to give some closing remarks here. If there's anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to say, just to let our audience know what's on your mind and exactly what you're thinking as we begin to bring this conversation to a close. So we'll go in this order. We'll hear from Keith, then we'll hear from Angela, we'll hear from Sandra, and then we'll hear from Brandon, and I'll turn things over to Gilles after that.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, and thank you to the Bunnelle Foundation for the invitation to be on the panel today. I'm again so honored and pleased to be a part of Georgetown County. I look so forward to getting out and meeting people and working elbow to elbow on the work that needs to be done throughout our community. I've said it many times that our community is a key factor to the success of any quality school system. And so right now we seem to be shackled a little bit of what we can do and what we can't do because of health concerns. But I so look forward to working together with everyone moving forward in a positive direction. Thanks again for having me today.
Thank you for making the time, Keith. Angela?
Thank you certainly to the Bunnelle Foundation. This has been a wonderful opportunity to converse with all the panelists and to get the word out about what we're doing in Georgetown County. I just appreciate all the hard work that the Bunnelle Foundation, you've been a great partner, certainly to Georgetown County government, but wonderful in the community. And I look forward to future conversations and continued work with all of you.
Thank you, Angela, for your efforts. We appreciate you. Sandra?
Yes, thank you to the Bunnelle Foundation for putting this virtual conference and these great panel members. As we are all the new kids on the block, and I guess me being the oldest one in the block, it's a great sense for me to work with these leaders here. And as you can see, we are a diverse group of leaders, the four of us here on this screen. I'm looking forward to continue working with our collaborative efforts with the county, the school district, and Brandon also during our emergencies. I really appreciate all the efforts of everybody in this community to move forward the community. Like everybody has said here today, it takes a village to raise. It takes everybody to raise this community. And as long as we're here, I think we will be enhancing and improving those collaborative efforts. I have some ideas on the flooding, but I know I have only 30 seconds and probably I exceeded mine. But at some point, if we would like to have a campaign on how we can tackle these flooding efforts, we need to do that really, really bad. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you, Sandra. We're very fortunate to have you here, and thank you for also helping us build out the future of our conversation. So I appreciate that. Brandon, you have the final word.
All right, Dr. Bailey, Bunnelle Foundation, thank you for this opportunity. You know, as we continue to live through these uncertain times, that obviously the COVID situation and the other challenges that we have discussed today continue to be present in our community, we will remain resilient, we will remain strong. And you know, that's the one thing that I'm proud to serve Georgetown County and ensure that we can maintain the continuity of this community through ups and downs, whether it be north, south, east, or west across this county. So you know, we love Georgetown County. We will continue to protect her to the best of our abilities, whether it be a virus that we can't see or a storm that we can see coming for days in advance. So thank you for this opportunity, and for everyone listening. You know, as we previously mentioned, we're in the peak of hurricane season, so don't wait until it's too late. Prepare today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you to all of our panelists. I'm so happy to hear many of you say that you are accessible and people can continue the conversation by just emailing you or reaching out over the telephone. Thank you to the Bunnelle Foundation for allowing me to be here. It's been such a pleasure to be able to meet all of these wonderful panelists, and I definitely am walking away from the conversation knowing that we are building a brighter future. Jills?
Every single one of you all, the 5 of you, for your time and effort and your preparation. This was just great, and we feel like we're in good hands, and I love spending the morning with optimists. It's a wonderful thing. So thank you very much for that. I have 2 shameless plugs. One is the census. We are still woefully behind in the census. South Carolina is number 44 out of 50 states, and Georgetown is not a shining star in the state. So do what you can to promote asking people to complete their census. We will be putting some signs up on the entranceways to Georgetown. We've got a lot of printed material that we had made up. If you need any of that, we have it in 2 languages, in Spanish and in English. Just call our office and we'll put it out on the porch for you to pick up. And my final shameless plug is for our first Zoom Common Issues, Common Threads, which those of you in the nonprofit community know about. Those were our quarterly lunch and learns, which we had wondered if y'all just wanted to do away with until the pandemic was over, and your survey said no. So we have Chief Waits, Kevin Waits of the City of Georgetown is going to be our speaker on Thursday, September the 3rd. Leading through a crisis is what he'll be talking about. You need to register for that, as you do with Common Issues, Common Threads, and it will be at 11:30, and it will be about an hour, and we would love to have you all there. So we enjoyed having you here today. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and thank you because all of y'all are part of what makes Georgetown County great. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.